Can you give blood as a long distance runner? Simple answer to that question is yes. Yes, you can. Before we go any further, I feel it's probably obvious, but I want to state it anyway. We'll be talking about blood and there will be mention of needles. So if you're squeamish, don't watch the video. Giving blood is obviously a really, really good thing to do. A lot of people might want to, but they're a little bit nervous about what is involved, how it works, and especially if you're someone who does a lot of exercise, you might be pretty worried about whether it's sensible to try and give blood if your exercise volume is like consistently really, really high. I'm going to cover a few general considerations that apply to anybody who wants to give blood, and then I will go on and talk a bit more specifically about things that you need to take into account if you are running a lot and you also want to try and donate blood. There might be reasons you cannot donate blood. There are a lot of people who are completely unable to donate blood for various reasons. There are various health conditions that will mean you may never be able to give blood ever again. There are some health conditions that mean you might not be able to give blood for a while, or while you're on certain medication, but if you've been off that medication for a while, you'll be able to donate blood again. In some situations, your body might just not respond to having a pint of blood removed from it. Some people are able to give blood according to all their health markers, but it might be that when they go and donate, they just pass out every single time, in which case they will prevent you from donating because they obviously don't want to put you through that every time. If you are able to donate blood, the main piece of information you and the NHS are interested in is what your blood type is. Your blood type will essentially determine how useful your blood is going to be. The majority of people are likely to be A positive or O positive. These two blood groups make up just over 70% of the population. So it means it's very, very common blood, but it also means it's very, very useful blood. If you have either of those blood groups, it means your blood can be given to a lot of people. The rarest blood group is AB negative. Unfortunately, people with AB blood can only donate to other people with AB blood, and there aren't too many of you around. So unfortunately, if you have AB, particularly AB negative, you might not be in that much demand, because people who are AB blood group can receive blood from everybody, but they can't give blood to anybody other than people within their own blood groups. However, the rules for plasma donation are in reverse. So if you are AB negative, you are a universal plasma donator. And that's worth taking into account if you feel like you want to donate, but you feel like donating blood might not be worth it necessarily. The one that most people are probably aware of is the blood group O negative. If you are O neg, you can donate to everybody. O neg donors make up about 7% of the population, and they are in very, very high demand, as it's generally the blood group they use for emergency transfusions. So if they don't have the information on what blood group a person is, they'll have to use O neg because they could kill the person if they donate or give them the wrong blood for the blood transfusion. So if you are O negative, it's likely your blood is going to be effectively used for emergency stock, so that if there's like a catastrophic car accident and there's people on the scene who are bleeding out and they need blood in them very, very quickly, then they'll use O neg blood for that kind of situation. So those are all the main blood groups. There is one more subtype of blood to take into consideration, and that is my blood group. Around 2% of donors have the RO subtype. This subtype is really unusual, and it's the only type of blood they can use to treat people with sickle cell disease. People with sickle cell disease rely on blood transfusions, regular blood transfusions, to continue living. So as you can imagine, the RO subtype is in very high demand, and there are not many of us. So this would be my main plea if you are considering donating, or you have kind of thought about it but you're effectively still on the fence. If you don't know what your blood type is, you could end up like me. You could go in to donate and then find out you have the RO subtype, and every single additional RO donor that the system gets makes a massive difference. And if you are RO, you know that your blood is literally keeping people alive. You know that your blood is essential for people to live normal, healthy lives. Personally, I feel incredibly privileged to be an RO donor, and I can't really put into words the feeling a successful donation gives me. Anyway, we're done with the preachy bit now. We'll get into things you need to take into consideration as a donor, and then we'll go into a little bit more detail about what you need to take into account if you are a long distance runner and you are wanting to donate blood. Okay, let's sit down for a bit. Main things to think about on days when you want to donate blood are the time of day you're donating, how much you have drunk, and how much you have eaten. You need to be well hydrated. If you're not hydrated enough, your blood thickness will be too gloopy, basically, and it's going to be a bit of a struggle to get the bag filled in time. When they take a donation, they need to fill the bag within a certain time, otherwise the blood basically becomes not usable. So if you're really well hydrated, it should go a lot smoother. The blood will come out at a good rate, and yeah, you'll be able to have a successful donation. It's not the only thing to take into account. You need to make sure you've eaten really well beforehand. So although they do have blood donation appointments in the mornings, if you are a little bit uncertain, if you've got low blood pressure, for example, it might be better to donate in the afternoon so that you've had breakfast, a morning snack and lunch, potentially an afternoon snack as well, so you've had lots of food before your donation, and that will really help with having a successful donation. The other thing to consider is having salty foods the day of your donation, because that will bring your blood pressure up, which means that the blood will come out at a good rate and you'll get the bag full in time, basically. Another thing to take into consideration is the temperature. If it's really cold, so if you're donating in the late autumn, in the winter, early spring, you need to take into account the weather. If it's really cold, your blood is just not going to flow as quickly, so just make sure you're wearing warm layers on your way to the donation, and maybe if you've got like a fidget toy or a grip strength tool that you can use while you're on your way to the donation to keep the blood flow up in your arms, that would be a good suggestion to try. They do say you shouldn't drive after your donation, and I would highly recommend not driving after your blood donation. So if you can get someone to take you, or you can get public transport, those would be the options. Yes, avoid driving straight after your blood donation. I feel this one is pretty obvious, but I'll just say it anyway. Do not drink alcohol before or after your blood donation. That should be common sense and logic, really, but you know, I feel like it just has to be said. Obviously you've got less blood after your donation, so you'll get a lot more drunk a lot more quickly if you try and drink alcohol, and it's really not recommended. And obviously you don't want to be drinking alcohol before your blood donation, because that'll effectively contaminate the blood. Similar with caffeine, they do ask you not to drink caffeine before your blood donations, because it can affect the quality of the blood. So yeah, bear that in mind. If you're a heavy caffeine drinker, just maybe prepare in the run-up to your blood donation by easing off on the volume of caffeine you're having on a day-to-day basis, so that it doesn't hit you quite as hard on donation day when you can't have any in the morning. I've had a little bit of a roller coaster with getting successful donations. I have very small veins, so it's quite difficult for them to get the needle in me, and it's taken a while for us to figure out like the process really for getting a good donation out of me, and hopefully we've nailed it now. But fingers crossed, I guess, for the future. If you are like me and you've got small veins, you might want to try and ask for a more experienced nurse to do your donation, because they'll be more able to find a good vein that's going to work. For instance, we've figured out we have to go in my basilic vein, because although the other one is the one they prefer to use, it's kind of at the wrong angle and it's like the wrong place on my arm, so it's really difficult to get the needle in right. Whereas in my basilic vein, it seems it's a lot easier to get it in and get a good donation out of me. So those are things to think about if you find that you've got small veins like me. If you do find needles uncomfortable, ordinarily you are going to find the blood donation needle really uncomfortable. It's a big needle. I'm autistic and I have some like pretty significant sensory processing issues, so blood donating is really uncomfortable for me. But I'm really stubborn and I really want to donate blood, so I basically grit my teeth and bear through it, and put up with the really horrible feeling of the needle in my arm, pretty much. But it's just something to be aware of. If you really don't want to be uncomfortable, and you know that having a big needle in your arm is going to be just something you can't really tolerate, then you don't have to put yourself through that. There's just something wrong with me. When you go and give blood, they will make sure that they've given you a load of water beforehand. They'll give you a cup and you'll be able to fill that up and have like half a pint of water before your donation. And they've also got snacks and stuff afterwards, so they'll probably want to give you some like salty crisps straight after your donation, if they are a little bit worried about whether you might feel a bit faint or not. This is just to bring your blood pressure back up, and I would suggest if you are having your donation around midday-ish or kind of close to tea time, try and make sure the meal you have after your donation is really, really salty, because it will just help bring your blood pressure back up, and it will remove or lessen the risks of you feeling faint or feeling a bit woozy in the kind of like 24 hours after the donation. The Sheffield Donor Centre in the city centre of Sheffield is really close to Wagamama's, so that's my preferred option, because it's not very far to walk. So if I am feeling a little bit faint, I don't have to go very far. And a lot of the food at Wagamama's is really, really high salt. So it's a good option for me personally. I treat myself to a nice meal out if I've had a blood donation. All right. If you're a runner, how do you handle this scenario? So one of the key things to take into consideration is how much you're training. I run 6 days a week. So obviously in a blood donation week, that might have to change a little bit, or I might just have to work around the donation day. If you're male, you can give blood every 3 months. If you're female, you can give blood every 4 months. I would say you don't have to feel like you have to stick to that, especially if you're training for marathons, ultramarathons, etc. If you're in the peak of a training block when your 4 months rolls around, obviously you do not want to try and give a blood donation while you're in the peak of a marathon training block. It doesn't work. Believe me, I've made that mistake before. It takes you long enough to recover from a blood donation, and you'll be overall dehydrated enough that the donation probably isn't going to work. It's not going to be successful if you try and donate during the peak of a training block, and you will have just lost a pint of blood. So you can't really do any hard sessions, certainly the day after. Potentially the kind of like 2 to 3 days after, you've got to like really manage your efforts and be really, really careful about it. And you are going to find that your performance is not going to be as good for a few days afterwards, just because your body's working to replace the blood that you've lost. They recommend that you don't do exercise 24 hours before the donation and 24 hours after the donation. Obviously, this is going to be a little bit personal and a little bit subjective, depending on how much exercise you're used to doing. Obviously, if you're used to exercising basically every day, then going for like a 20-minute jog in the 24 hours before a donation is probably not going to take that much out of you. If a non-runner did that, then yeah, their donation's probably not going to go so well. But if your body's used to that kind of volume, I ran the day before my donation, my most recent one, and I went for a little run the day after. I felt fine, but my body is used to that kind of exercise volume, so that is personal to you. I would suggest, if it's your first donation, stick to the advice and don't run in the 24 hours before or the 24 hours after. And if that feels absolutely fine, then maybe next time you try a short run either side and just kind of feel it out like that, basically. So this is the key thing. If you're a long distance runner and you want to donate blood, you do have to have quite a bit of self-control. I have had an unsuccessful donation in the past because I tried to donate during the peak of a training block for a Fell Marathon, which was daft. I don't know why I thought that would work. Got completely overwhelmed by my own hubris, I guess. Anyway, the donation didn't work, and it does go as a negative mark against your record. If you have X number of unsuccessful donations, I think it's maybe three in a row of unsuccessful donations, they do have to take you off the register, which is not great, and it's not really something you want if you do really want to donate blood. So speaking to you as someone who has messed it up and done it wrong, just be patient. Just make sure that first time you donate, you are just following all the rules to the letter. And then once you've figured out what definitely works, you can start to kind of like test the boundaries a little bit. Obviously, don't go crazy. You are losing a pint of blood. So you do still have to look after yourself and be careful. This means that you still can't go and run like 20 miles a day after you've donated blood, even if you felt great the first few times. All right, folks, there's not too much else to cover. I've had my donation in the last few days, so I can give in another 4 months, but it will be a little bit longer than that because the next 4-month point falls during training for an ultramarathon. So I'm not going to donate at the 4-month mark, I will have to wait a little bit longer until after I've done my ultramarathon, and I've had a couple of weeks to kind of like settle back in. That would be my suggestion after a long event. If you've done something like a marathon or an ultramarathon, just make sure that your next donation is booked sort of 2 to 3 weeks after the event, so that you've had enough time to kind of let your body bounce back a little bit. You can hydrate yourself back up to kind of normal levels and make sure you've fed yourself up a little bit so that your donation is going to be successful. So hopefully that's given a little bit of clarity on how to approach it if you are someone who wants to donate blood but you're a little bit uncertain about how to handle it as someone who runs a lot, and just how to manage it around your training volume. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.